Hello and welcome to this Google Hangout from Sigma Xi, the Scientific Research Society. My name is Heather Thorstensen. I'm the Manager of Communications for Sigma Xi. I'm speaking today with faculty members and students from Ursinus College in Collegeville, Pennsylvania, and Eckerd College in St. Petersburg, Florida. In April, Ursinus and Eckerd each hosted a conference that Sigma Xi co-sponsored. The other co-sponsor was the Institute on Science for Global Policy, also known as ISGP. The focus of both events was on linking scientifically credible information to the formulation and implementation of effective domestic and international policies. Both conferences focused on food, something we all need to care about. From Ursinus College, we have Dr. Anthony Lobo, an Associate Professor of Biology and a Sigma Xi member, as well as Aubrey Paris, a student who participated at the Ursinus College Conference and a Senior Fellow for ISGP. Representing Eckerd College is Dr. Liza Conrad, a Sigma Xi member, and Barbara Del Castello, a student and Sigma Xi member who participated in the Eckerd Conference and an ISGP Fellow. Welcome to the Hangout, everybody.
Thank you.
Let's start with Dr. Lobo and Aubrey. The Ursinus Conference was titled Safeguarding the American Food Supply. Both colleges, Ursinus and Eckerd, had student involvement leading up to the conference. So, Tony, I'd like to know, how did Ursinus get students involved?
Well, we had a course that was taught during the fall semester that students signed up for, and the course really centered around reading and discussing issues around food safety. And as you might imagine, that's kind of an interesting topic for all of us. And so we had 18 students in the class, and those students worked really hard to prepare themselves to serve as debaters at the conference.
And Dr. Conrad, you also were doing a similar thing over at Eckerd, is that right?
Yes, that's correct. I did pretty much the same thing. I had 16 students in my course, and we focused on food production and sustainability, and it was very similar to Dr. Lobo's, where we did a lot of reading and discussion-based things, preparing the students also to participate at the conference. And then those students also got quite a few students on campus involved because they were so interested and excited about the conference that they kind of drummed up a lot of excitement on campus for us as well.
Let's talk a little bit about the background of these students. What were the majors at both of your colleges that these students had coming into this conference?
Well, at Ursinus, most of the students were biology majors. We had a few environmental studies majors, and a lot of Ursinus students, particularly a lot of the biology majors, also have either double majors or minors in lots of other fields. So we had, chemistry minors and psychology, philosophy. So we had a pretty well-rounded group, I thought.
And Dr. Conrad, what about at Eckerd?
Eckerd, we had a really diverse set of students. I think we had at least 10 different majors in the class. I only had 2 biology majors, and then we had a lot of political science and international relations, environmental studies, economics, literature, and so we really covered quite a wide variety of majors. But we covered a bit of a different topic than Dr. Lobo, and so it was the production and sustainability side of food is really, really diverse, and so we wanted to bring in cultural aspects of it as well as scientific aspects, and we brought students from all different backgrounds so that we could have those discussions.
Great. And Aubrey, I wanted to get your perspective as a student who participated. What do you think you and your peers as students learned from going to this conference and participating in it?
Well, I think that there were 2 really big strengths to the way that the students got to interact and be involved. The first would probably be the fact that our students really got to see how science directly impacts society and really observe and participate in that intersection of science and society. And here at Ursinus College, we are liberal arts and we have a very multidisciplinary attitude towards things. So we're constantly encouraged, especially in the sciences, to consider the way science that we might perform in the lab can be translated into the social sector, the political sector, etc. So I think this is a really great hands-on experience for our students to see maybe how policy is worked out and consider not just what happens behind the lab bench or in the field, but how that's then translated into policy later on. I think the other great strength of the way the conference worked and what it gave to our students is the fact that we're literally taking students in the undergraduate sphere and putting them at a table next to professionals, people who are leaders in industry or in policy or what have you, these people that have been professionals for quite a long time. And then you have students and you're telling them you are just as qualified in this case to sit next to these individuals and ask these really important questions of our presenters. And so it's really empowering for the students and gives them a great deal of confidence, and it's just overall a great experience in terms of getting that professional aspect of what it's like in the real world, I guess, in science and society.
Barbara, is there anything that you'd like to add in terms of the student perspective that you got at Eckerd?
Definitely. One of the things, the main difference between the Eckerd College group as well as the science group is that my class had a lot of non-science majors. And so we really got, really delved into the idea of scientific communication. Scientists aren't, in their own little bubble. They're part of a larger global community. And so you have to be able to interact with people who might not be as well versed in the scientific knowledge as you are. And being one of the couple of science majors in that class, it really pushed me to break down what we were saying, break down that knowledge, so it was really digestible for, say, someone who might not have taken a 200-level course in genetics. And to be able to create and foster that kind of community that we had in that class was really, really great.
Nice. And I'd like to explain what goes on at these conferences. So Dr. Conrad and Dr. Lobo, could you explain what happens the first day and the second day at these conferences?
Sure. So the first day of the conference, we had 3 speakers come in and talk. But what's really interesting about it is they only speak for 5 minutes. And then we have a panel of 40 to 50 kind of experts in the field that question them for 85 minutes. And so it becomes more of a debate or discussion on the topics that they're representing. And then the second day, and the audience is present there, and it's open to the public, so everybody can attend, and they all get to witness this kind of interaction. The audience can submit questions as well. And then the second day, everybody who attends can come back, and we break into small caucus groups or discussion groups where everybody discusses what they can agree on in terms of what the presenters were speaking about and what we can do, these actionable next steps about, in our case, food security. And so everybody in the room gets to kind of put their own opinions, knowledge, ideas together, and then we come back together at the end of the second day and discuss what all these small caucus groups discussed, which will go into a publication, and we can kind of see how everybody thinks we can approach these problems of food security.
Okay.
The conference under science. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead,
The
Tony.
conference under science really ran pretty much the same way. We had 3 presenters. We had 42 people around the debate table, and another 50 or so in the audience. And the first day were the debates, and then the caucuses the next day, and wrapping it up with a plenary session. And as Dr. Conrad mentioned, the entire proceedings of the 2 days then ends up in a publication. And the students in the courses really work to compile that publication. They take the results of the discussions on the second day and really distill it down into areas of consensus and actionable next steps. So I think that's a special experience for students as well, that they are sort of putting together this really significant publication.
And then Barbara and Aubrey, since you guys have worked with ISGP, what happens to that publication once it's out?
Well, the books are made available online to everyone in PDF format on the ISGP's website, and there's also a mailing list that the ISGP has compiled over time. So anyone on that mailing list receives the book once it comes out. But so does anyone who attended the conference. As long as they registered with an address, they'll be sent the book when it comes out as well. And another unique feature with the ISGP, it's really important to realize that the ISGP doesn't really have any opinions. They're simply representing what was discussed at their conferences. But they do use the books to create briefings and other material for different organizations or departments that might be looking for information regarding what the public thinks in terms of policymaking. So I think it is, like Dr. Lobo said, pretty significant.
Great. And Barbara or Dr. Conrad, could you talk about the topics that came out of the debate at Eckerd?
Well, we had 3 different speakers. We had Rachel Goldstein from Mars, then we had Lee DeHaan from the Land Institute, and then finally we had Allison Vaninanem from UC Davis. And they came from very, very different backgrounds. As I said, Rachel Goldstein was with Mars. She worked in their sustainability department. And then we had Lee DeHaan, who talked about perennial crop breeding. And then finally, Dr. Vaninanem talked about genetics in regards to genetically engineered crops and animals. So our debates very much ran the gambit of what do we think as a society we could do to help secure food for the future.
Okay. Is there anything you'd like to add to that, Dr. Conrad?
I think that, we tried very hard to pick speakers who would cover everything from an industry perspective, as in Mars Incorporated, to a public plant breeder versus a biotech expert. And so our discussions, like Barbara said, kind of cover that whole gamut. It was kind of surprising to us because we really were prepared to spend a lot of time talking about genetic engineering, and the audience and the panel members really got into some of the other speakers quite a bit, and we had a wonderful discussion about perennial crops, which we didn't see coming. We thought that might be the topic that would be a little far-fetched for people, but everyone really got into discussing how we can use perennial crops to be more sustainable in our agricultural system. And the same is true also for the biotech discussion, and then also with Mars Incorporated and what we can do about food waste and kind of innovative packaging designs and things that can come from industry that can help us secure our food for the future.
And what about at Ursinus? What were the topics that were discussed in your debates?
Okay. So we had 3 really diverse topics, which was really interesting. Our first one was brought up mainly by Dr. Robert Buchanan, and his information really delved into a lot of risk assessment, how the public perceives scientific information that they're receiving, and how to better communicate scientific information. So there was a lot of talk about social media, traditional media, etc., and how we can either use them or maybe how we don't like them so much, depending. We then had Karen Everstein, who talked a lot about economically motivated adulteration of food, commonly called food fraud. So that was super diverse, and it was really interesting. I know I can speak from the student perspective. This is something that a lot of the students actually didn't really know existed before we took Dr. Lobo's class, and it became a topic of discussion knowing that Dr. Everstein would be present and talking about it. So there was a lot of discussion about how we can better mitigate EMA or food fraud, and also why we should be concerned about it, in the midst of more what a lot of people consider to be more pressing food safety concerns like disease-related issues. Why we should be concerned about food fraud. And finally, we had H. Morgan Scott from Texas A&M, and he talked a lot about ethics in food production. So another really diverse topic, whether it be animal ethics or considering future populations and being able to provide food for them. So much like the technologies, the genetic technologies discussed in the Eckerd conference, our kind of hot button issue, I would say, would definitely be the food production ethics. So
Great. And Dr. Conrad, why do you think it was so important for you guys to have this conference at Eckerd and to bring this conversation to your community?
Well, I think that some of it has to do with the style of the conference, because we had sitting on our panel some real local experts on the food systems here in St. Petersburg. And so we had the founder of our Saturday morning market panel. We had one of the board members of a sustainability of urban agriculture coalition in St. Pete. And so it was a real way for our community to get involved and engaged on the topics of food security, whether it's globally or locally here in St. Pete.
Dr. Lobo, same question for you. Why do you think it was important to bring this conversation to the Ursinus community?
Well, again, food safety is an issue that we all are concerned with, and it's, I think, valuable to gather the perspectives of all the members of the community on these, really pressing issues. So, as Dr. Conrad described, for her conference, we had a wide variety of people. We had public health officials, other representatives of local government. We had representatives of the beef and dairy industry of the state. We had high school teachers and their students. We had farmers and food producers. So it was a nice mix of people, all of whom I think added their unique perspective, especially once we got into the caucus discussions on the second day. Those were sort of these perfect little incubators of discussion for what turned out to be some contention on some issues, but a lot of consensus on a lot of the issues.
Can I actually add to that really quickly?
Sure, of course.
Like Dr. Lobo mentioned, the whole high school community, something that happened with our conference last year and that was replicated this year, which I think is fantastic, is the large number of either high school teachers that come, and then they also bring their students. And so we had a lot of high school seniors there, and it's shocking in such a good way how vocal those students become, especially on that second day. They're some of the individuals in those caucus groups that are the most vocal, and then they're representing their caucuses during the plenary session, which is really the culmination of all of the small caucus discussions in the plenary right before the conference is over. And they're out there doing their thing and really representing their community and their background as a high school student and bringing a unique perspective that I just thought was fantastic.
Great. And I think one of the main reasons why Sigma Xi wanted to be involved with this conference is because we want to get the scientific information out there and be part of these policy discussions. So I wondered if you guys heard any feedback from the participants that were there, if they were surprised by the science, if it's something they hadn't heard before, if they really felt like they learned something science-wise in terms of these topics.
Absolutely. I think, again, the whole issue of economically motivated adulteration, food fraud, that's a topic that people really are not generally aware of. And so the idea that it's a potential problem or threat was something that people needed to learn. And I think taking away from the conference also issues of the understanding of risk and what kinds of tolerance should we have for risk, given the fact that the food production industry is huge and it's impossible to control every last little potential threat. A lot of people I don't think quite appreciate that zero tolerance is sometimes not achievable.
Okay. Would anybody else like to add anything about any feedback that they heard from participants?
Well, absolutely. I know that I'm speaking more for Professor Conrad at this point, but she has been getting emails from almost every single person that was involved in our conference, whether they were just sitting out in the kind of pew area as a public audience member, or they were a panelist. And I'm sure that Professor Wepner has also been receiving these emails. He was also very integral in helping set up our conference here at Eckerd. And I have been running into members of the conference, whether they're panelists or things like that, and they're still coming up to me and saying, wow, I had no idea, or wow, that was really great, I didn't expect that. And I just think a lot of people were really, really amazed at how effective this conference was and how this model can really, really work and voice the opinions of everyone involved. And I will probably be feeling the repercussions of this positive energy for quite some time from now.
Great. And I know that Sigma Xi is planning to host a workshop for our chapter leaders that are interested in this conference later in the summer. And I wondered, as people who have been involved in putting these conferences on, if you have any advice for any of the chapter leaders who might become involved.
I would say keep an open mind, because you really have to stay on your toes when you're running or participating in one of these types of ISGP-style conferences. You are interacting with people that have very diverse opinions and very diverse backgrounds, and they all have something valid and important to say representing a different sector or a different interest group. And, you know, we discussed specifically at our conference, you know, the most effective policy is going to incorporate as many interest groups as possible. So keeping an open mind is, I think, really important. And also, especially for, you know, students, being confident and knowing that your opinion is valid and is, you know, we want to hear it, and you're put there on the debate circle for a reason. We want to hear from you. And so for anyone participating, I think it's important not to get intimidated by all of the other really influential people sitting around the square, because you are one of them.
All right, well, those were all of the questions that I wanted to ask you guys. Is there anything else that you wanted to say about your conferences at your colleges?
I think so.
Well, I can say as an ECHR community, we have been really excited about this conference, and I'm sure we will be excited about the many conferences to come. No matter what the topic will be, I think that ECHR has definitely made a home for the ISGP conference here.
Great.
That would definitely be true for Ursinus as well. The students like it. It's a really great experience for them, and I know that there are some students here who were in the class this year that are, you know, wondering, will there be one next year? Will I get to participate because I'm graduating next year? And so we'll see.
I do think too that and it's great that Sigma Xi is involved, because, as has been mentioned, these are young people that are the decision makers of the future, that are a part of this process. And I think having students be a part of this and being debaters and again, developing the confidence in their own opinions is something that, you know, this academic partnership is proven to foster, and I think Sigma Xi being involved is, you know, a great addition to that.
Great. Well, thank you, everybody. It was great to talk with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.